Hello, everybody. This is Greg Smalley with Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast. And today I am joined by, as I often am, by Giles Edwards.
Hello.
I left on your screen if you're watching this. And below us is our guest today, Samuel Tressler IV, the fourth.
Hello there. Thanks for having me.
Director of Leda.
Pleasure to be here.
Which we will talk about in the second half of this broadcast. We're doing it a little bit different today. We're going to go through the weekly releases, which we have kind of a lot of. Then we're going to take a very short intermission, which will be probably invisible to you if you're watching or listening to this, and resume with an interview with Samuel. But let's go straight into today's movies, because we do have kind of a busy week of movies, and they're all up on the screen at once right now. And I'm going to take them off one by one until we get to the first one we're going to talk about. This is a new theatrical release. It's been on the festival circuit for quite a while. It is Lynch/Oz, a documentary about David Lynch's relationship to the movie Wizard of Oz, which is kind of, I've seen a few documentaries of this kind, which are documentaries that are actually, works of film criticism that you're seeing live. So it's kind of a neat idea. They're interviewing people like John Waters and some other fans and experts about the connection between Lynch movies and the Wizard of Oz. The obvious one is Wild at Heart, where it's very obvious citation. Other than that, I'd be interested to see what they come up with. They seem to focus on the idea of the curtain, which was important in Wizard of Oz. The green curtain and the red curtain recurs throughout very many David Lynch movies. So that's out in theaters, probably will be on physical media and VOD very soon afterwards. Do either of you have any thoughts on Lynch/Oz?
I was so it played at a lot of the festivals that Leda played at. So I kept seeing it pop up and I kept wanting to check it out. And then when I watched more of the trailer and such, I never really had the motivation to go rush to it, because I did start to think that maybe this is more like a film essay on the concept of the connection rather than like a film interviewing David Lynch about his inspirations and such. So I didn't know if either of you had seen it and if that was a true
I have not.
or not.
That's the idea I got from it too. I think Giles also probably had the opportunity to see it and missed it for the same reason.
That's quite possible. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that if I ultimately end up seeing it, I'll probably enjoy it. But considering, I don't know, the unspecific thesis that I'm guessing it has, it's like there's going to be a lot of connections, whether they're there intentionally or not, and if they're there unintentionally, what that may or may not mean. Because there's Wizard of Oz is very much a magical storytelling movie, and that is a lot of what Lynch does. That's what a lot of filmmakers do in general. So I'm sure the parallels are there, and there might be some deeper ones than I'm thinking of off the top of my head. But at the same time, I'm skeptical that it's shall we say, a definitive interpretation.
Yeah, sure. And I think the Wizard of Oz is so embedded in culture generally that probably every filmmaker is going to, have some connection to it just by accident, even.
Yeah, especially for an American, filmmaker and storyteller like David Lynch from the Midwest, no less. It's going to be like, okay, there's no way he wasn't affected by this if he, decided to have a career in motion pictures. So,
a solid Midwestern values of David Lynch. Okay, well, I think that's one that's probably something that people are going to want to watch on VOD, and that's probably where it will play best. You can just lounge back, eat popcorn in your house, and watch this movie. This one is, of course, one we haven't seen because it just came out. I don't think it even I didn't see it on festival runs. Just sort of popped up at the last minute. It's called Unidentified Objects. We have the trailer, which will be embedded on the website, hopefully where you are watching this. But if not, go to 366weirdmovies.com and you can find it. It is about a homosexual dwarf who goes on a road trip with a odd woman who appears to be obsessed with UFOs. And so it's one of those wacky, mismatched people road trip movies. And a lot of the trailer plays like it's going to play it safe and just be mildly quirky. However, the reviews that I have read from the few people who've seen it cite a sort of surrealism to it, which probably comes in the trailer. You can see brief flashes of what I'm guessing are aliens who are dressed very glamorously with funny makeup. And so it's, I would probably have passed over it myself if I hadn't spotted those reviews, which were referring to the film's surrealism, which I kind of expect to be in the background, but we'll see. I haven't seen the movie. The trailer certainly doesn't play that up, but then again, why would the trailer? They're trying to get people into the theaters, not drive them out. Did either of you watch the trailer and have any thoughts on this?
I did check out the trailer. I thought it looked fun. It looked like a simple, like you said, quirky, independent road movie. I don't know if I'm like jumping at the bit to catch it, but at the same time, it looked like it might be a fun, easy stream.
Yeah, the one interesting flourish I thought in the trailer was the bulk of it plays like a kind of the fish out of water melodrama thing, focusing primarily on the homosexual dwarf character, and then gets into that sort of like mumblecore kind of vibe of like here are some kind of funny things, here are some sad dramatic things, and impactful, and then almost out of left field it spikes into, oh actually no, we're going to be doing a comedy with maybe drama being in the background, when it the trailer at least tilted its focus to the young woman of the pair and her insistence they go to the abduction sites. And sort of after that point, it seemed like it was advertising a very different film tonally anyway. So as to whether all that works together, I'm curious enough to be willing to check it out when it's available for me so to do.
Yeah, it definitely did feel like that mumblecore vibe I was getting. But then it goes a little bit more like it's leaning towards something almost Gandhi-esque or something. I wonder how far they take it.
We shall have to see.
We shall see.
So the next one, this is something that most of you won't be able to see. It's just a special screening. This is a still from, does anybody recognize this still without me telling them? You probably know from.
I wish I recognized it, but no.
It's from a movie titled If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? Which is a great title. I think it comes somewhere from the Bible. I think it may be a little mangled, but at any rate, this is from the Ormond, the filmmakers named the Ormonds. They were exploitation type softcore pornographers who then pivoted into making religious movies after a religious experience. So they made religious exploitation movies. There is a huge box set of their movies coming out, and it was supposed to be out last week. It's been pushed back. However, this event is a screening of the two most famous of their Christian exploitation movies in Los Angeles at something called, I think, the Philosophical Research Institute.
Yeah, I'm seeing the site here, Philosophical Research Society, and unfortunately,
Society.
by the time we post this video, unless we do it sooner, it's
Oh my
today.
gosh, you're
Yeah,
right. It's today, isn't it?
well, today
Well,
being
you're
the
not going
first
to get
day.
this. We'll talk about it a little. Yeah, it's coming. The box set is coming out. I missed the date, that the date was today. We should have done this last week probably to get people advice.
I bet they're going to be full up anyway, considering the nature of the venue, and
at any rate, you sign up. That's put on by something called the Miskatonic. What do they call it? The Miskatonic
Institute of Horror Studies.
And it's an author of the book on the Ormonds is going to be there. There will probably be other screenings. The box set, I believe, is coming out the following week, so we might talk about it a little more then. I wanted to get this in, maybe to get people thinking about that box set that's going to come up. But unless Samuel has something to say about this, we're going to go on to the next one. Do you?
Only that I wonder if this film may have recently played in New York at some point, because that title definitely came across my radar in the past 6 months, but I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, no, it's probably in connection with the box set, and it is a great title, but I just love the title. And the co-features The Burning Hell. I should mention Alfred Eaker was a huge fan of these films as religious camp, and he's written 2 essays on those films on our site, which you can find. They'll be linked. But let's move on. This one is a movie I reviewed and quite enjoyed. It's been out in theaters in 2022. It's been on VOD for a while. It's just now coming to DVD. And they used to do this. They've stopped doing it as frequently, but it's coming out on DVD this week and then out on Blu-ray in a couple weeks from now. A lot of the bigger movies right now are bypassing DVD entirely and just going straight to Blu-ray and not even bothering with a DVD release. But this is coming out in 2 stages. One DVD's out first. It is the only way to describe it is it's like West Side Story if it had been done by Kenneth Anger. Crazy costumes, a lot of leather men. It's set in New York in that late 40s, early 50s time period, but a couple little musical numbers, and this fantastically strange performance by Andrea Riseborough as a woman whose sexuality is awakened. Her husband is probably almost certainly a closeted gay man whose sexuality gets awakened by these murderous leather gangs that are roaming the streets. And it's by Andrea Kramer, and it did not get the attention I feel it deserves, at least. Even among weird movie fans weren't talking about this as much as I thought they should have been. I think everybody who sees this, who's a fan of strange and surreal movies, is probably going to connect with it. I'm guessing neither of you have seen it, but do you want to comment, or if you have seen it?
I haven't caught it, no. I just saw the trailer that you shared. Stylistically, it definitely reminded me of Kenneth Anger, and but also a bit of Fassbinder's Corel with some of the lighting and such. But it looked super stylized, super well done. So I was interested to see if it was one of those films that almost felt too theatrically boxed in with the high concept lighting and stuff, or if it really works for the project. So it sounds like you liked it, at least. And she looks great in it.
Yeah, it is. She has a wild performance. It's really like a female Nicolas Cage performance in this.
Oh, cool.
Changing up her accents and just being wild and crazy the whole time. I should mention one more thing. It was co-written by the director Andrea Kramer, who has another weird movie out that you should check out, Give Me Pity, Co-written by David Noel Taylor, who Giles and I think, interviewed from Man Under Table.
Okay. Yeah, he's a fascinating guy.
Yeah. Nice team up between them. I do recommend people try to check that one out.
Awesome.
But let's move on to the next one, which is one that hopefully everybody has seen. It's a 4K, another 4K Ultra HD release, not a new release, but it's going on 4K, and this time not from Criterion. It's Kino is responsible.
Oh, okay.
I know Criterion had put out the last edition of Night of the Hunter, and now Kino's got the rights. A lot of those movies switch rights back and forth. Both Criterion tends to be the gold standard, but Kino always does good work as well. So I hope everybody knows the plot to Night of the Hunter, and I don't have to recap that. I'm guessing anybody who's made a movie in black and white is familiar with this and has probably thought about it and studied it. Maybe I'm wrong, though.
No, most definitely. I mean, I guess you're alluding to me.
Yes.
But yes, most definitely. I mean, this is one of the. I mean, I guess you call it a noir in a way, not your typical noir, but it's one of those films that you just watch and some of the shots are so captivating. I mean, the underwater shot to this day, it's just one of the all-time shots in cinema that I wouldn't know how to pull it off myself. I mean, I think the performance by Mitchum, the overall, this film is just incredible, and I'd love to see it in 4K. I'm wondering, do either of you have a 4K player? Have you been watching many of the classic updates to 4K, and what's that experience like?
I have, and it's never a bad thing to do. The overall improvement of what you're seeing will depend at that point on the state of the source print that they're working from. So I saw a very underground thing that was shot in Super 8 originally back in 1992 that was upgraded to 4K, and it's as nice as it's going to be, but it can only be as nice as good Super 8. Whereas other films that were either originally filmed on 35 or even 70, it's like, ooh, whoa, it's out there quality. It's way up there quality wise. So presuming they're working from a good source, this should look magnificent.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm overdue to see it again, so maybe I'll wait for a 4K version. But yeah, it's an incredible film, from the visuals and like the use of sound and music as well, and just the pacing of the whole thing. It's just so effective in the story.
Absolutely, and the subject matter being so ahead of its time for the 50s.
Oh, for sure, so dark.
Yeah, and the sexuality in it being so twisted, and that's great movie. Everybody needs to see it. I will say I don't have a 4K player, and I think my current TV screen I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I think you have to have a really, it would be nice to have a bigger screen so that definition made it
right. Yeah,
well, most definitely. I think.
Yeah. Next one is probably not going to be updated to 4K. It was originally shot on video in the 2003.
Yeah.
This is a movie called Red Cockroaches, a very cheap micro-budget movie that came out on DVD, direct-to-DVD, won some festival awards, came out on DVD in 2003, and now is being re-released, on Blu-ray by, I believe it's by Saturn's Core, who specialize in finding old released direct-to-video movies and re-releasing them. This one seems like it has a bit of artistic intent behind it. It's a sort of science fiction dystopian thing set in a New York City that's washed by acid rain and has a strange plague of red cockroaches. Watching the trailer, it looks like most of it was probably shot inside apartment interiors with some early sort of CGI for the exteriors of New York City.
There was some cemetery, I think, recurred that looked, shall we say, genuine. So that's for a low budget person, it's I think that's always a good go-to. Is cemeteries are usually big. There are usually not many people around, much less police people asking for permits and the like. So, but yeah, everything else had that. I guess it's going to be considered increasingly charming vintage early aughts CGI, where, I imagine about 5-10 years from now, we'll look back, it's like, gosh, just look at that. I mean, it's just amazing what they were doing there. It's just such a different feel than you get from this actually reality looking stuff we're futzing around with today.
Yeah, it's like there was no AI used to generate that image.
The trailer looked intriguing, and for whatever reason, I wrote down it's mostly like an abstract swapping between ambiguous perspectives of within an apartment, the dystopian outside, bugs, blurry close-ups, and opens the first bit of dialogue that they quote is "Good morning, did you sleep well?" which I think is I'm hoping I haven't seen this, but I'm hoping it nicely sets the tone, and that no, we are in for something very unpleasant with that. And apparently it's the first of a trilogy, so
the other movies had colors in them also. It's like a white something and blue something.
Oh, just like
I think he's only done one of them, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Yeah. I was getting such a mixed feeling from the trailer at first. I was like, oh, this looks really intriguing. And then I was like, oh, this looks extremely low budget, but like maybe charmingly so. I go to kind of a film gathering every Sunday in Manhattan, that downstairs it's a bunch of real hardcore film enthusiasts that play just super abstract films, and a lot of them are kind of very like almost C grade, like shot in your basement movies. And this started to give me some of the feel of that, like thing that you're not going to see unless you're really digging the crates deep, but you might find a gem there.
Yeah, well, that's what we try to do. That's, so we dig in a lot of crates and find a lot of crap. Every now and then you find that gem, and
the crates
does make it worth it. Let's move on to one that at least one of us has seen. I haven't seen it. It's Something in the Dirt. Giles, will you? First off, I'll say this has finished its theatrical run. It's been on VOD. This is the Blu-ray release for fans of the movie. If you haven't caught it on VOD yet, you can do that. But Giles, why don't you describe this movie for us and tell us who made it first?
Well, it is from one of our favorite pairs of filmmakers, contemporary filmmakers, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorehead. They are darlings at Fantasia when they've shown up there. I saw their film The Endless, which came out I think about 5 years ago now, and this is their latest narrative that if you like these two filmmakers as actors, you are in for a treat, because it is almost just them. And it's almost just them inside and slightly in the alleyway of an apartment in, I don't know, Los Angeles, somewhere in California, concerning, I'm going to have to read back on my review I wrote. A bartender and a divorcee witness supernatural phenomena and fall into an increasingly disturbing and increasingly compromised investigation into patterns, aliens, multiple dimensions, and secret societies as they try to come to terms with their own realities. So they have one of the characters is very neck deep in the conspiracy theories, many of which are of our time, and the other is just this sort of washed up, not quite burnt out surfer kind of guy, and what they get up to trying to record these phenomena. So it's as a two-man show with this pair. It's a good, it's very chatty, but there's also a lot of interesting stuff going on, because that's the way Benson and Moorehead think. So I know I quite enjoyed it, and even nominated it for the Apocrypha. And while it's not overtly part of their kind of overworld that they've created within their series of movies, it's definitely, fits well within it. So any fans of the Endless and their prior stuff, you'll see some, you'll see things discussed that, they've been exploring throughout their filmmaking career.
All right. Samuel, have you seen it or any of the Benson Moorehead movies?
I don't believe I have. I haven't seen anything on this. Your explanation made it sound quite intriguing. I've just written them down, but I'll have to look these guys up because I don't. Oh no, I've seen Spring. Yes. Yeah, so I saw Spring recently, and I kind of got the similar pitch to what you just gave, like about these guys and the films that they're making, and also about kind of their openness online of their interacting with people and telling about how they made it and such, which is super cool.
Oh yeah,
because so many people are so like, fourth wall up.
Yeah,
so
no.
I will say that this is kind of a they had just made a bigger budget movie before that called Synchronic, which had Anthony Mackie in it, who's going to be the new Captain America. It was before he was announced for the role, I think, but it was, so they were moving up, and they were tapped to do this, which I think is currently out, this Moon Knight series on TV, a superhero Marvel thing.
Oh yeah.
So they were, they were going up to the big time, and so in between that, they made this little cheap movie that harkens back to their early days and their roots. And I thought that was pretty cool because they could have gone Hollywood, and they took the time out to make another low budget movie that they love to do. And I appreciate that effort, even though I haven't seen the movie yet, but Giles recommends it. So
yeah, and they're swell fellows. I accidentally met them after the Endless. I was waiting for someone who didn't show up, and they were also waiting for a different person who didn't show up. So I was able to talk with them for 15-20 minutes, and swell, creative, fun guys.
Yeah, I think, did we get that recorded, or is it just
no, this was just a happenstance thing, and I didn't think to, but yeah, definitely a great impression in person as well. So
okay.
And some of the creature effects in Spring were quite nice.
That was a little bit bigger budget Spring.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it still had that kind of like, it still had that independent kind of spirit to it, and that almost mumblecore kind of two character back and forth feeling, but then when they brought the creature effects, they did it pretty well. I wasn't quite convinced with the ending, but I am interested in watching more of their work.
Yeah, they're worth investigating for sure. So here's one that I think may have slipped under the cracks for a lot of us. It's Drowning by Numbers by Peter Greenaway, coming out in a new, I don't believe it's a 4K UHD. It might be though, but a newly restored version. For some reason, Severin is involved, and I believe they're partnering with Kino for these. The exciting thing about this, I think, is that this is the first of a large number of Peter Greenaway movies that are getting restored and re-released.
Oh, it is 4K.
It is 4K. Yeah, I thought it might be. I wasn't sure. Yeah, a lot of them are getting released. I have not seen Drowning by Numbers, as it's one of Peter Greenaway's little game movies, and I think the game this time is that numbers appear in the background, I believe, of each scene that goes sequentially. So it goes from 1 up to however many scenes there are. You can see in the movie still on the cover here that there's a 44 in the background hanging on the wall. I believe you're, if I understand correctly, as you walk through the movie, or as you watch the movie, you look out to see those numbers hidden in little corners and things. I know, Giles, do you have any thoughts? I don't think you've seen it.
No, this is one of the few of his features I have not seen. And of course, there's a world of his shorts, and he had an internet interactive series that he did back 1 or 2 decades ago. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm thrilled that at long last they're going to be releasing his movies in a higher quality, because I can't think of anyone who has as much a focus on lush cinematography that is, a contemporary of Greenaway. Is just everything, even in the ugliness, there's, he's always striving for a certain beauty, be it, of course, his famous The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, it slips my mind, Baby of Macon. It's just like he's such an intensely visual director with an obsession, a wonderful obsession with lists. And so, this gimmick here is like, yeah, he will do that. If you look at his, his debut feature, The Falls, it's just list, and he makes a movie out of it.
So yeah, so I guess we're all in the same boat. This is one of the few Greenaways I haven't seen, but I also am a huge admirer of his work. And there's a lot of directors that I appreciate because they come from theater and you can see how they work with characters and such. But Greenaway comes from the painting background. And so I think that's why he's so visually just stunning, like every frame. Most of the time, like Draftman's Contract, by the way, like that film is just like so visually, like it just like out symmetries like any Kubrick I've ever seen. Even like it's just so. But Greenaway also for me is just like such a love or hate director. Like there's some of his films that I'm just like, oh my god, this is like some of the best cinema I've ever seen, or at least personally. And then there's other films of his that are just like, what the fuck is he doing? Like it's just like, because he can just get so absurdist, like sexualized, or like so like just out there. Like I guess a Zed.
Okay.
Zed and Two Knots is coming out soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, but I can tell you, Baby of Macon
weird.
made him no friends.
I think what we had there is Samuel may be frozen a little. Oh, there he is. He's back. No, he's frozen again.
Oh dear. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I can hear you. Your video is not synced, but that's okay. We're almost done with the weekly reviews. We only have one more, and this is one I mentioned, or I had missed that it came out, and it's because of the way it came out. This is Space is the Place from Sun Ra, and I think the reason we missed it as a movie is because it came out a couple of weeks ago, I believe. It's from a outfit called Modern Harmonic, and what they are focused on is releasing the soundtrack. So they have the soundtrack to Space is the Place, the original version of the soundtrack, which had not been released before, along with the studio version of the soundtrack, which had been released before. And then they threw in a DVD and a Blu-ray of the movie.
Yeah, the movie was kind of incidental to the.
Yeah, the movie was incidental, so that's why we didn't catch it. And I saw it looking at new releases on a music site. So I have, it's one I've been meaning to track down. Space is the Place. Sun Ra is, of course, if you know who he is, he's a very crazy jazz figure from the 60s, a pioneer in the avant-garde jazz of the time. And he had a shtick where he claimed to be from Saturn, I believe. And and his music was themed around a lot of space. So Space is the Place. There's Interstellar Corporation, something. His band is the Intergalactic Solar Orchestra. And this was sort of a movie he made, which was sort of a mix in the 70s of his performances, his jazz, with some sort of science fiction elements and some what you might consider blaxploitation elements thrown in. A wild mix. As I say, I haven't seen it. I'm a big fan of his music, though. I have a lot of his albums, which not many people can say. But do you guys have any thoughts about Space is the Place?
This one's kind of a mystery to me, but I do like Sun Ra as well. So I'm fascinated to hear more about it. This is the first I'm hearing about it, though.
Oh,
Fascinated. Yeah, I'll second Samuel's remark there. Except for I'm not familiar with Sun Ra, but
yeah, he's even in the field of jazz, he's kind of a cult thing. His music, it isn't really all that harsh or atonal, but it's very different than anything you've heard before, anything that was going on at the time. It is a little harsh and atonal, but not like some you may have heard of where it's just screeching and wailing, although he does a little of that. And there's a lot of chanting in it and things, and always this sort of science fiction theme to it, which is just really cool. So it's nice that he made a movie to showcase all that. And so I think we're going to call that part of our broadcast to an end, and we'll come back and talk with Samuel about his movie Leda, which I would call Leda, but Leda. And so we're going to take a short intermission. You guys will not see it. We'll probably take a little break and just be back. All right. See you momentarily.
See.
Hello, we are back for part two. We had a brief intermission and got in new costumes, some of us, and here we are. We're going to talk with Samuel Tressler right now about his movie Leda, which is a 3D movie. So you would need special equipment to see it in that way, but you can also see it in a 2D presentation. Giles has seen the movie and reviewed it. He'll do most of the questioning, but I thought maybe I would start out with just a question about the mythological inspiration, because the story comes from a old Greek myth that I read in Ovid, Metamorphoses, and also William Butler Yeats had a poem about Leda and the Swan, which when in college I did my thesis on Yeats, so I was familiar with that. It's a story about Zeus, as he was prone to do in the old days, would take the form of animals and seduce and impregnate human women. And so we have a sort of a modern take on that. Is what attracted you to this as the impetus for your first feature?
So I had been trying to come up with kind of one of the hardest things in making stuff for me is kind of coming up with that spark of an idea that I can commit to or be inspired by. And my co-writer, Wes Pasterfield, had done a painting on Leda and the Swan and kind of proposed the idea. And initially it was the fact that we could kind of explore a lot of themes between pregnancy, between divine intervention, between a relationship with God, like similar to like what Mary had, but to explore it in different ways. Like how does the human relate to that experience? And also, subtle hints at, sexual trauma as well as childhood trauma, just to try to build this character of Leda beyond the myth. And then learning more about the myth and how it is such a part of classical art, such an iconic image in classical art with, so many thousands of renditions of Zeus at the pond with Leda in the form of a swan. I thought it would be pretty cool to do it on the screen. I also really want to, or have strived to develop like a language in cinema that is artistically, has artistic merit. And so to use a subject of classical art and bring it to the screen, it just seemed like it made complete sense.
Okay. That's what I had hoped to hear. Giles, will you take over now, the questioning?
I will do my best. So that's obviously the background of the story, the impetus as to why you pursued it. Hopefully this segue will get us somewhere. The overarching style of your film, Leda, what struck me most among a number of things was, shall we say, the photographic nature. There's a keen awareness on your part of where you're putting your lens and how things are arranged in front of it, such to such an extent that I theorized in an aside in my review that you had a background in photography. And I was wondering if perhaps, if you do, and even if not, maybe describe your background either in, film, photography, or art in general as to how it helped you shape the look that you achieve with this debut.
Yeah, I do not have a background in still photography. Um,
Oh,
We're losing Samuel.
I think so. Let's see.
was more
If you can hear me, Samuel, we're not getting your audio.
very interested in film and kind of move. Bear with me.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going on a tour of the apartment or the house.
Trying to make sure that the housemate is not streaming something. Sorry, I'm in France right now renting this shitty little apartment that some guy promised me I had high-speed internet, and we're not sure if we do. I guess.
High-speed internet in France probably means something different than it does in the US. So
I'm learning that, yes. If I can't even stream.
Well, we've been hearing you fine, and now we see motion that looks pretty synchronized. So last I heard you say was about your lack of background in still photography.
Right. So I don't come with a background in still photography. I did some in my early years, but I would say that the influences come more from my interest in film theory and film history, and kind of the mixture. I mean, I feel like the most valuable things in cinema, from my perspective, are the subjective camera, where the camera is being put, the perspective that the audience has on the scene. That mixed with the mise en scène, like what is in the screen, like you said, and then all together with the montage, what shots you put next to each other, which is obviously just like classical cinema training. But I sometimes, even with the film, I feel like sometimes I'm a little too obsessive with those, and so things get very underlined in those visual styles.
I'd say there may be truth to what you just said there, but I will pair that with my remark that was not at all problematic for me. Anyone seeking, shall we say, a more traditional film experience may not be pursuing this title in the first place, but the fact that you have made a movie which occasionally brought attention to the fact that we were watching a movie, I don't think is a shortcoming.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's almost kind of the self-reflexive. Sometimes I have to find what I think is wrong or where I want to go, or start to judge myself. But I've been super impressed, because to make a feature film that's silent and the film that it is in this day and age, and try to release it on a massive scale and see the reviews, I thought it was going to have a lot more people just immediately shooing it off. But even the people that are like, oh, this movie wasn't for me, I'm not too into the more art side of films, it's still beautiful and it's still worth watching. And that's been super interesting to hear.
Oh, good. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned silent, because that isn't quite accurate. It's a dialogue-free film, but it does have generally like ambient sounds will crop up in the soundscape as well as the musical score. So that leads to my next obvious question. Why did you you and your co-writer decide to keep this free of the spoken word?
So in all the shorts I had made and that's not completely true. I had made some shorts with some talking, but it was really almost an obstacle of can I do this, and how will it cause the story or the style of cinema making to change if I force myself not to have dialogue. You could argue also that it's that I'm not so comfortable with dialogue, or that I don't really like dialogue so much. But it was just, for me, it was an experiment in kind of pure filmmaking. Like, how can I make a captivating modern story? And also, like you said, it's not a silent film per se, but a dialogue-free one, because there's no reason to make a completely silent film. And I didn't want there to be any inner titles or anything that like pull you out of the actual story. So to try to still have it be relatable and have it be emotive, but not have to explain it through dialogue, it was a complete challenge, and it really changed the whole process of the film. I rewrote the script probably 7 times throughout production and post-production, just because there were so many things that weren't working. We would get into rehearsals and have 2 people trying to play a scene that was on the paper, and it just felt so pantomime-y, or it's so easy for an actor to try to make up for the lack of being able to talk, that they would just over emote. And so to find that balance and to find it the natural like feeling of the whole thing, I really wanted the lack of dialogue to pull you into the film rather than distance you from it. And I think we found a good balance.
Yeah, I'd say so. And that makes me wonder, where did you find the cast, or like what was the going about the casting for this? Because as you've hinted at, the performances require fairly constant travel along a very narrow tightrope between failing to communicate anything and communicating excessively.
Right. So we primarily, because we shot the film, entirely in Maryland, and there's not really a big pool of everyone that worked on the film, as far as the crew, was primarily Maryland based, and they were extremely talented and awesome. But as far as casting and stuff, we didn't want to be limited to just our local community. So we did a lot of online casting, cast a wide net, had hundreds of people send us in demos or whatnot for the lead. And Adeline, who ended up playing the role, Adeline Theory, she was actually our first Zoom interview. And then we did callbacks in person. And she had a background in Lecoq theater movement training. And so that, she's also French native. So she had to do a lot of stuff without talking already. And between like her sensibilities and interest in film that connected kind of with ours, and then her ability to play more movement based, she kind of brought a lot to the process of what would work and what didn't work. So I kind of leaned on her a lot for self-directing as well. And then, we would also just try to direct the story through camera placement and editing as well.
Because she's in, well, not every shot, but virtually every shot. So she's definitely the anchor and the primary presence cast wise there. So that was sounds like a good find for you. I'm glad
it really was. Ended up becoming a creative partner to this day. So it's she was super good. It was tough, but and we also, being completely independently funded, the production, the whole process was about 10 years, and the production actual principal production spanned 11 months because we would shoot for about a week. Then we would raise funds. I would just work jobs, and my co-producer Clark would work jobs, and then we'd shoot for another week. And that was mind-numbing. And by the time we got to the last one, there was about a quarter of the crew was left, but we got through it. It was just, I would never want to make a film that way again, but at the same time, I'm extremely proud that we were able to pull through it.
Oh yeah, one of those great experiences to look back on and be able to have survived it and talk about. It's like, oh, I remember. I understand.
Yeah, the bonds that were made are very strong.
Excellent. I guess speaking of movement and funding, I love the website for it. It's very Spartan. And the thing that caught my eye immediately before I volunteered to check this out, in unfortunately only 2 dimensions. Not many people opt for 3D. Why did you opt for 3D? And what challenges did that add to, I imagine, add to your already big plate of difficulties?
So I guess the 3D was kind of it was a finding process, because we had decided this was the film we were going to make, Leda, and I had decided that I was going to quit my job and figure out how to make it, because I had met a guy that needed someone to run his rental house, and I was like, I'll run the rental house if you let me use your gear to make the movie. So you start to find these little ways to actually maybe be able to focus all your time on making the project. And once I got to that point, I realized he had several matching camera sets, which is kind of the first necessary thing you need to make a 3D movie. And I don't know if it was just me partially being an asshole and being like, we're going to just make an independent 3D movie that's like really well done, or
no words.
With no words. Yeah. So, I mean, part of it was just, it's like we take one thing out, we take out the dialogue, and let's just see if we can add dimension and use that as a storytelling technique. Because that's the other thing. I am intrigued with the illusion of 3D depth on screen beyond just like focus and lighting and stuff, but like the actual 3D depth. I've been intrigued with it since I was like 9 and at the eye doctor and had to pinch a fly's wing or something with 3D glasses on. And so I've always felt like 3D's it's kind of gotten a bad rap and been dismissed as an amusement park addition to films rather than a potentially storytelling technique. And so the goal was, well, this is a progressive story of a woman kind of losing touch with reality, and how can we maybe use 3D to increase the depth so she's visually, like, subliminally farther from the other characters and farther from her settings as she's losing touch with them. It just seemed kind of like a natural addition to it. And then it was extremely unnatural because I didn't know what the hell I was doing trying to make a 3D movie. And I tried to, we tried to find an affordable 3D rig, which basically you have to have one camera for your right eye, one for your left eye, shooting through a half mirror rig, like a beam splitter rig. And those are like 60 grand to, buy or rent. And so I bought like a $5,000 one, and it was complete shit. It kept like losing alignment. So we ended up having a friend of the guy that owned the cameras, had a CNC machine and constructed a beam splitter rig for us. The whole thing ended up weighing 70 pounds with 2 red cameras on it. And I had somehow, I forget how, but I had made a contact to Vince Toto, who had done the stereo for Dread 3D. And I couldn't afford to have him on the set, but he was our consultant. I would send him ideas and images, and he'd be like, yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I read like 3 textbooks, and that's how we started. And then I just asked my DP to try to figure out how to move this 70-pound rig as much as you can. But it also lent itself to the style of the film because 3D works better with longer, slower shots. So you can scan the frame. And so that was part of the adventure. It was very difficult. He wanted to move a lot more and had to basically build rigs that were swings and stuff for the finale scene. it was quite an endeavor. And then also a post, of course, you have two films that are like the same film, and you have to sync them all and color correct them to match. And it was an absolute mess, but I'm kind of a complete nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I was able to.
So you'd have to be. So
yeah,
kudos for that.
I think now we know why a lot of people, low budget filmmakers, don't shoot in 3D.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had to completely learn how to use the DaVinci Suite and spend several days just sitting at my colorist's desk to do all the 3D stuff because he had no idea like how to align the 3D. So I'm like, all right, let me just take over. It was a little bit maddening, but yeah.
Well, it certainly the 2D variant I saw, I definitely could get hints of a number of cases where the third dimension could be very nicely explored. One of them, the really glorious shot. It's a nighttime shot. The moon takes up like a third of the screen, and Leda, the heroine, is riding from left to right on, I don't know if it's a horse or some sort of four-legged, noble animal beast. And it's just this kind of thing that, it's a postcard that I want to stretch back a yard so I can, watch how that's all, interacting with itself. So I could see that's okay, this is it. Okay. Because I've seen some 3D, and yeah, generally I've said, oh yes, it is gimmicky and has the added difficulty in that a lot of places that screen it don't illuminate it sufficiently. So you have,
most definitely.
Yeah, the post-production errors of like, okay, they're not actually translating what was done with it. But with Leda here, I was like, okay, wow, I have never before regretted not having a 3D disc and television rig, because it's like there's that and a few other things, including, and I love my favorite. I guess there are a few elements. I mean, you obviously didn't make a comedy. This is a mythological melodrama kind of, story here as befits the source. But there was just this, something that made me chuckle out loud, and I hope appropriately, toward the end, near the final encounter, there is a quintessential horror film pan that you see Leda. She's starts the film not doing too well, and by now she's even worse. And I believe she's clutching a dagger, and she's standing in the foreground around a corner, and it pans just quick to the left, and you see the menacing thing resting at the corner of the stairs, and it's an egg. And it's the contrast between her expression that is, shall we say, on the realistic side of 1920s horror expressionism with this blade. And then you see this thing that is, we've seen this thing on and off throughout the movie, but, it's like, oh, she's terrified. What's she terrified of? Oh my God, it's an egg. And it's just that shot was just a really delightful. And, for me, actually nicely broke the, building tension that had been going on for the preceding 20 minutes and then continues for, I think, up until just about the end of the movie at that point. So, that I imagine in 3D would probably have been even, shall we say, even more, so to speak, than it already was as I saw it there. But again, do forgive me if I misread into your intention there, but it just really felt.
I mean, as serious as the film seems, I mean, I don't take myself seriously at all. I'm talking to you from France, where I'm currently attending a clown school, so.
Oh, how's that going, by the way?
It's been good. It's a program that's called Via Negativa. So you learn through failure. So you're meant to be shitty all the time. And I've had a lot of shitty days.
Oh, good. Glad to hear. So yeah, that's I think that covers quite a bit of what I was kind of curious about. I won't be closing up quite yet, because there's one thing I did want to mention to tip you off. I don't know if you've read my review, but there was a contemporary short film that very much came to mind, which was also dialogue-free. A filmmaker by the name of Thomas Stark had a short called A Tale Best Forgotten, which is about 2.5, 3 minutes long, and is a sort of, looks like it's all one take of almost a spiraling film camera of this old farmhouse by a stream, and a horror story just unraveling within the various rotations of the camera with, up in a window, down on the ground, reflected in the water, and then spiraling back around in a manner that must have been a lot of challenging fun for the cinematographer. But I was very much reminded of this kind of extreme abstractness put to truly functional storytelling, which is something I don't see very much, because the abstract crowd, from what I've observed, may be going more for an emotion or a vibe, and the storytelling crowd very much, telling a story and getting the two together. I've seen you do it. I've seen Thomas Stark do it. And obviously Meshes of the Afternoon is, one of the big things to bring up here. And that also telling a story through its abstract means, which, was, unheard of then, and certainly largely unheard of since. So I just wanted to bring that shorter contemporary title to your.
Yes, and is it available to view online? Because
I have looked it and I found it briefly, and I will look again, because I had to go 5 pages into a web search to a MailChimp archive.
Sure, yeah, because I think when I read your review, I looked it up and couldn't find it.
Yeah, I had a link, and I think it's gone dead now. So it exists. I've seen it. I know people who have seen it, and it just kills me. I was like, I cannot find it anywhere. It was I think it was at Slam Dance amongst one of their shorts collections a couple years ago. So I will continue to look for it, because it was really I haven't really seen anything much like it. So, but that's a guy I hope continues.
Find it. Share it along.
A hint on that, Giles. If you say it was on Slam Dance, they may have it on there. They have their own sort of pay site, so they may have it there behind a paywall.
Okay,
quite possible.
All right. Well, that's some hope then. I don't mind paying for it, but so.
But yeah, the film has gotten several reviews have given it comparisons to Maya Deren and such, and I'm not sure if that's I don't know if that's an intentional thing. Obviously, this is my first feature, but it does reflect some of the styles of some of my short work, and it's interesting because I'm trying to work on the next script now, and to see where that's going to evolve to. So I'd like to push more in that direction, but it's a growing, a blooming voice, I guess.
Well, I guess that is sort of a segue into sort of a winding down, which is something we always want to do, is ask you what's up next. So it sounds like you might not have it fully sketched out yet.
I have 2 scripts that they're both around the 50-page mark currently, and they're fully outlined out. Basically, I'm hoping to find some potential representation, and in the meantime, I'm going to try and dive into the next script later this year. As far as actually shooting it, my plan is to. Leda took us 10 years, and not over. It was a 6-figure budget, and that's why it took 10 years. And so my goal is to try to make and finish one in the next year that will be much smaller and probably more intimate, and hopefully, in that sense, more direct from mind to screen. So I think it's going to be much more autobiographical and simple, but still very abstract. It's not going to be a period piece in 3D, black and white, that's for sure. But in the meantime, I'm also writing a big abstract, leaning towards genre sci-fi piece or something once I do my more of a budget. So
sounds like that sounds like a good procedure, to have 2 projects in the can, one that's very ambitious and one that's very doable, and then you can go with whichever one. If you have the means to go for the ambitious one, go for it. If not, you have the other one sitting there. But I wanted to ask, how does clown school fit into the filmmaking career?
Well, after I finished Leda, I definitely kind of had several major burnouts, because that process was horribly difficult. But I realized that, you know, the technical elements of filmmaking I was very familiar with, and that was kind of the easier part. But working with the actors was, I felt like, my weakness. It was harder to know what that process was and how to find different things. Fortunately, the actors were talented enough to help me get there with them. But so in 2019, I found this theater school in France that is focused on clown, but I went to some of the actual acting classes for it. And then I wanted to come back for the theater school or for the clown portion of it, because I'm trying to potentially find my own character to work into some films. There's you know, eventually I've got to dig into comedy a little bit to reach more of a massive audience, and, you know, be able to tell deep, moving stories, but reach everyone, kind of like Chaplin or Bean.
Or Mr. Hulot, since you're in France.
Oh, most definitely.
I was wondering, because I believe Hodorowski went to clown school for a while, among many
Oh,
things.
did he? I wouldn't be
Perhaps
surprised.
it was mime.
Mm-mm.
But there's been a long sort of connection, especially in France, I guess, between surrealists and clowns. So that's
Most
kind of a
definitely.
natural progression.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's, and beyond that, the whole learning to fail and such, it's kind of the perfect point for me right now, because I'm in that sophomore film fear, just terrified of making some garbage, especially after making a film that I'm proud of. So at this point, it's going to be a forced effort and diving into the next one. But now I'm used to forcing the effort constantly.
Excellent. Giles, do you have any other questions, or do you want to?
I think that very well covers the background, the future, the film itself. Again, my review, I think, indicates that I highly recommend the experience, and it's visually stunning. And I'm not using that because I don't have anything else good to say about it, but it does stand out as very purposefully made and very adeptly made. And now we've heard quite a bit as to why that is the case, you know, considering 10 years and I imagine 18 to 20-hour days for many of those 10 years and all the surroundings. So it's definitely a beautiful piece of storytelling craftsmanship that I do recommend. And speaking of recommendations, I was wondering if I could ask you, Samuel, what's your hometown? And do you have a restaurant there you can recommend?
My hometown is Frederick, Maryland. I don't live there any longer, but a restaurant, Cafe Bueno's got a pretty damn good burrito if you're into that sort of thing.
Many of us are.
Are you out kind of in a rural area, or is it the suburb of the Baltimore area?
So it's about 45 minutes west of Baltimore, 45 minutes north of DC. I was actually raised on a dairy farm. My father's still a dairy farmer. But Frederick itself is the second biggest city in Maryland. Not that that's saying much, but it's a small, cute city.
Cool. And thank you for the recommendation. As for Leda, I know that you can get it on Blu-ray, and I believe that comes in either, or the 3D and 2D versions come together, so you don't have to worry about that, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's one disc with all of them on it. Yep.
You can also find it on video on demand on Amazon. Any other way people can get it that we should know about?
Yes, you can stream it in 3D on Vudu. You can also stream it in 2D on Vudu. You can stream it on Canopy if you have the library card, or on Hoopla. Also on the Google Play Store, on iTunes. I'm sure I'm missing something, but yeah, it's out there in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And then also on DVD too, if you want DVD. and we're making exclusive 4:3 anaglyph mono audio VHSs for real collectors.
Oh, sweet nostalgia. Well, I certainly don't blame you.
I thought I was done it, and I wanted to be done the whole project. And then, like last month, I found myself spending several hours making a 4:3 pan scan cut of every shot of the film. Like, I'm just addicted at this point.
Are you sending out the little glasses with the red and the blue lens in the
yes,
VHS?
yeah, for the people who order the VHS, they'll get 2 pairs of anaglyph glasses.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Sounds good. I'm glad we did this long format so we didn't have to cut you short, because we did have a lot to go over on the reviews this week, and we got to we'll probably post these together and separately. So people who just are interested in the interview will be able to go to that, and people who are interested in the whole show can watch the whole show. But I think we will log off now. Thank you, Samuel Tressler IV, for being our guest. Thank you, Giles. Coming back next week, I will be co-hosting with L. Rob Hubbard. I finally convinced him to come on, because he wants to interview our guest next week, who is John Michael McCarthy of Teenage Tupelo fame, which is a movie you probably haven't heard of, but those who have know what I'm talking about. It's a very, very strange movie, and we're excited to have him next week. So that said, goodbye, everyone. Thank you all for coming on. Thank you for listening, and we are out of here.